Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another week of sitting around chatting games. Chili, Elio, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing okay. You guys?
I'm not
Doing
bad, thank you.
doing great. Speaking of people not doing great, this just in. Game
Uh,
Informer was just announced like hours ago that they are done
Oh no.
after 33 years. They were, I guess, brought into a meeting and told that's it, we're closing immediately. It sounds like some people maybe didn't hear about it um, through a meeting. They found out about it through the tweet. So um, that's it.
That's I grew up
and
in
I'm not
or
just some people though, but it seems like some higher up people, like some of the big shots, found out from the tweet, which is the biggest shock. Like,
that
yeah,
sucks. I spent the past decade in Minneapolis, and I at multiple points either was in the process of potentially getting a job or an internship there. That sucks to. That's one more major actual publication for video game news gone. We don't have a lot left.
I I agree. See if I can share this here. Okay, there it is. So IGN reporting on it. The Game Informer has announced that it is shutting down after 33 years after GameStop reportedly told the publication it was closing immediately. They were all laid off and they would begin receiving severance terms. So that's something that, like, I don't know, it just feels like a staple in the space. I say that Game Informer does not like drive what I do and don't buy. So like I'm aware that this is probably the direction that most gaming publications are going to go unless they've been able to kind of adjust to the format changes. But it's definitely the end of an era, and it's hard to believe it's been 33 years. Um, Good reminder of how old many of us are. Uh,
The problem too
I
is that Game
sorry.
Informer, all good. It's just that it wasn't just about gaming news, right? Like that stuff was important, but you'd get interviews and the sort of
sure,
access that day to day a YouTube content creator might not have. And if that goes away, those connections just go away.
that's fair. Um,
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't really. I don't think I've never purchased a Game Informer. I've used the website a few times, but I don't think I've actually had a physical copy of the magazine. But like, I can understand why certain people like. The only physical magazines I used to really get was the official PlayStation magazine. That was only because it got a demo. I purchased it for the demo. That was about it. Uh, but yeah, I understand that a lot of people are sad that this loss.
Yeah. I also worked at GameStop once upon a time, and so that also,
Rite of passage for many of us.
yeah.
I did not work at a GameStop location. I kind of feel left out of those conversations. I did work at their corporate headquarters, which is not far from where I grew up,
Mm.
and so I worked in loss prevention, in corporate loss prevention. So
That sounds like that was either really boring or really interesting.
it was both. Uh, Exciting moments built up after lots of boredom. You're effectively security that is investigating employee theft is the majority of the problem, was the majority of the problem at the time. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
this was several decades ago, but at the time, very rarely was like a customer stealing enough to be something where we could go pursue that one person. Like, obviously we don't want theft to be happening across all of the stores. But like an employee that had access to the distribution center or had access to multiple stores inventory, they could just do so much damage so fast.
Yeah.
And so you would see people that were like, and then the ironic thing is a lot of times what they were stealing is the stuff that's easier to take. So it was like memory cards when those were first becoming a thing, and game discs. But when you steal one game disc for your friend to have the game, um, you like that's not that much theft. But the problem is they realize like, oh, I could steal 100 of these. But like, what do you do with 100 copies of let's say the newest game, God of War or whatever?
Yeah.
We have to sell 99 of them back to GameStop. So that's where it became really insulting, is that we were purchasing back stolen merchandise because GameStop is one of the only places you can offload it. And so like
That's kind of amazing.
you kind of got to build the case because you could literally like see the theft and then see them return it,
Oh,
and then
wow.
see the theft and then see them return it. And you would build up these cases. And I was working in a group that like our job to make sure it was prosecutable was to make sure the evidence was really firm. A lot of times that meant collecting evidence for weeks or months, which means in the process of doing that, depending on how fast they're stealing, the person may be accidentally pushing themselves from misdemeanor to felony because like you're waiting to have enough evidence. And if they're stealing faster and faster, some people were getting bolder and bolder, like they steal 10 games and they steal 100 games and and so like they end up crossing the felony line. It's like, well, now you're going to jail.
I feel like an 8-episode miniseries procedural of that could be hilarious.
So
it wasn't stealing, but the only thing I've done that's kind of close to that was like when Call of Duty Modern Warfare came out. For some reason, local game was given £35 credit for anyone that handed it in, but Sainsbury's was selling it for £25 a copy. So I went in there, bought 5 copies at 25 quid, and just went into town and sold them all for 35.
I mean that's not a grift as much as it's just smart. Like that's just buying
arbitrage.
low, selling high. It's a very quick
So,
turnover.
like-
So what I will tell you on the distribution end is sometimes a game doesn't sell as well as expected. So GameStop bought.
This was
They bought like let's say like twice as much Spider-Man as they expected, and then they have a bunch of like people who have the GameStop pass or whatever, so they get their Game Informer and all of that, and they want to buy it used, but like nobody's done with it yet. So they would literally have people in the distribution center unpackage new copies, throw the original case and paperwork away, take the disc and put it into a GameStop used game disc thing, and then ship that out to stores because we don't want to take a hit from the $60 down to the $35 we're going to sell it used, but we are willing to sell a percentage of these at the $35. So then you have used games and new games being sold right next to each other, and they are actually both new games. You just have some people that want the original paperwork in plastic, which keep in mind, they threw away.
It's a weird industry.
Yeah.
By
the way, talking about saving the company though, like this I think I've told this story multiple times now, but back when, because Game was originally shutting down, they were having like an issue, so they had a fire sale. So I went in and I literally just bought all the pre-owned games that they had for the PS3. I think I walked away with like 120 games for like $90, right? Because they were doing like this game was reduced from 60 to £1.
I wish I'd done that with the NES. They had big boxes out, and you could just everything was $1.
But what we did was, because they were trying to keep stores alive based on how many customers they had.
Sure.
So what I did was I went in and I bought the games as individuals of 5, so it looked like they just had a lineup of several hundreds of customers coming in to buy their games, because it was all just me.
Awesome.
Buying them in bulks of 5.
Well, speaking of bundles and continuing with the idea that we're going to share fond memories and then follow it up with bad news, Humble Bundle game layoffs leave indie studios in a state of uncertainty. So they laid off its 36-person team last week. Publisher is part of IGN-owned Humble Bundle. So as we continue to see layoffs across the industry, it's affecting everybody. And to just rip the Band-Aid off altogether, Bungie is next. So lots and lots of layoffs across all of it.
And that's why you're seeing the union.
And Bungie, by the way, Bungie was even worse than what we found out, because Bungie was announced as 17%, but it's actually closer to 34%. But it's just that 17% are being fired, but 17% are being removed from the studio and put into other parts of Sony Entertainment and making their own studio. So technically they're not being fired, but they're still being removed from Bungie.
I mean, at least a restructure is better than a firing in terms of
for some of them.
Yeah,
it doesn't look good.
It doesn't.
No.
But also we knew and most people had known that a lot of this was coming. In fact, I would say that like the thing, even for Game Informer, right? I remember working in circa 2019 at GameStop and thinking, I love this thing dearly. There's no way it's long for this world. So I'm not saying that these things are inevitable, but I can't say I'm surprised. It's sad. And this is also kind of like why you're seeing the unions come up more and more, because at least there can be protections for when there's either overhiring or whatever the cause are, for at least some protections for, okay, you know, you can lay me off, but at least have it's not like when they lay you off at Activision where it's like, yeah, you're gone. But what? No, you're just gone. Yeah.
I think it's hard to see that like the Pete Parsons of the world seem to be doing fine. You know, when you see like the Boeing CEO take a raise, that doesn't feel good. And like, I understand that's just optics in some cases, that, you know, like the AIG bonuses back in the day, you could have something where like he had a set of metrics, and if he hit them, he got an agreed upon payout, and he hit those metrics. Yep. And so he gets the payout. Like that is, it is what it is.
Well, not just
that payout.
Not just the agreed.
And I'm not saying that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, no, I just think he got a bonus from the deal when they signed up. Like, but remember, Sony was paying everyone that stayed at Bungie a certain percentage of. Basically, Sony gave Bungie a pool of money, and if they keep the staff for a certain amount of time, that pool of money is then split between all the staff. So also, that's one of the reasons why he got that big bung of money.
If you're in leadership, you're controlling optics, or at least being a part of making sure that stuff isn't a problem, is part of your role. I'm not saying that means obviously you don't get bonuses or something stupid like that, but I'm just saying that like knowing that that's going to matter matters.
It's incredibly frustrating to see these people, and I think a lot of it has to do with just how far we've let their salaries creep above everybody else's.
Yeah. The disparities.
You know, he's not getting a 10% bump. He's not getting a 10% of the annual salary bonus on his salary that's twice the average employee. He's making, you know, in many cases, we have employees, at least here in the US, that are making 10x, 20x the average employee, sometimes more. And then they're getting bonuses that in some cases are even larger than their salaries.
Oh, yeah.
So when you have people that are getting tens of millions of dollars, it's incredibly frustrating to see somebody who, in an industry filled with passion, so like filled with people who are usually being taken advantage of, they're not making what they could if they worked a job that was less exciting, are losing their jobs.
To be fair, though, from what I've heard from a few sources, like Bungie itself they need to just get rid of Pete. They really just need to get rid of Pete. He is signed so many supposedly sketchy contracts in the past that they've almost lost the license to the IP that they own in the past because of a contract they made. The company that they were with were very nice and they let them keep them, but they legally could have taken the IP off them.
Oh, no. Somebody sent out everything that Pete Parsons has bought.
Oh,
all of his. Oh no!
Nice vehicles.
No!
The Volkswagen Beetle. I love those things. I used to work on those in high school.
No!
Oh wow! It just keeps going.
So many.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, it keeps going. Oh god.
No!
Oh no!
It's so bad.
Look at the fucking scroll wheel. Oh god, it's getting worse.
Oh.
Look, far be it for me to say that people who work hard should not have money to be able to work and buy sort of thing they want. The problem is disparity, right? The problem.
$2 million in 2 years spent.
Can I say the worst?
Broke. He made more than that because he had to pay taxes.
Can I say, by the way, the worst part about this isn't the whole he can spend whatever he wants on cars. Like it's his money. I have no issue. He can spend whatever the hell he wants. The issue is he brought people over to see his cars a few days before they got fired,
and he knew.
Yeah,
he knew.
Yeah, that was like you can spend whatever you want on cars.
I asked to see his cars. He said he was busy. He wouldn't even show me his cars. Yeah, because he knew he was going to fire you. Like that's a different feel than come on over. You got to see these things. So cool.
Yeah, look at my cool cars. By the way, you ain't getting any.
Yeah, they're all. Many of these are worth your salaries. Just pick the one that aligns most with your salary and know that I'm enjoying it.
Call me crazy. I just think we have to feel the baseline quality of life guaranteed from full-time work as a collective society, I feel like we need to agree needs to be higher than what it is, right? Like I'm not even claiming what specifically that is. I'm just saying the baseline quality of life for full-time work should be higher than what it is. That's all.
It's just the pay gap.
Yeah.
It's the pay gap. Like, this one's old, but this is 2018. Like, in the United States, 265x between the average worker and the CEO. And it's only gotten more so. Like, it has not, nothing's shrinking. So when you're like, that's what makes this struggle, is that you have these people that are not sharing in advance when Game Informer is going to just literally wreck their world, when Bungie's going to wreck their world, and they're doing fine.
And the second one down there was India, where the average floor is much lower than the average floor here too. So like we're even way far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
Like exceedingly so.
So I don't know. That's hard.
Yeah. And that's 6 years ago when things were a little bit more rosy, as it were.
$265 for every dollar the average worker gets is just it's preposterous.
I mean, we there's enough isn't enough, right? Like part of the problem is that enough can never be enough, and that is something we've almost feels like culturally agreed on, which means that there's no reason for it to ever slow down. There's no reason to ever not just keep going for more.
Well, look at Pete's Porsches and know that if you work hard enough and long enough at the rest of the year, you can help him buy another one.
Happy, I can't even drive.
That hurts. Well, that is the beginning of the why gaming is depressing this week. We'll be back next week.
But please, before we move on too much, though, those that have been affected by the Bungie, the Game Informer, the Humble Bundle Gamer stuff, I do wish you the best, and I hope that you find your feet and you do find somewhere else in the industry that you can work, or somewhere else that you can work. I wish everyone that has this happen to them nothing but the best, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are willing to support them and try and help them find new positions in the industry. So good luck. Just wanted to make sure that people knew that, you know, it's a rough time for everyone, and we want to just give you the best.
Hard time all around. I'm sure we'll find out over the coming weeks what the severance packages on that were, but hopefully they were something completely reasonable.
I hope there was one. Honestly, it's my.
It just said severance. You'd be receiving your severance, but that doesn't mean, you know. I think this is why gaming unions has been the subject of, I feel like, multiple shows in the last several weeks.
Yep. Yep.
Am I doing that? I'm not clicking that. Okay. Well, subject of the day is Dawntrail too hard.
Yes.
At any point, do we ever get to talk about Final Fantasy XIV being too hard? That's like over its history. That's interesting. We've had some moments where, like, I think in Stormblood we had some alliance raids that were on launch pretty punching.
The Alexander Savage raves to me are the most famous example from the pre-Shadowbringers days, because the Heavensward Alexander raids is where the numbers dipped to the lowest of the player base, partly because they were just so ridiculous. The requirements were high, but also the fundamental, between the skill windows and everything, the actual clear rate for those were so low, it genuinely affected the player base numbers.
And every 2 years we reset item level. And there is nobody ahead of the curve. And so while many players do take breaks from the game and may not be ahead of the curve themselves, some percentage of most groups have more than minimum item level going into each tier after the first one. Do you think any of this is what Fido's saying, where it's just
100%.
We're forgetting what the beginning of Endwalker was, we're forgetting what the beginning of Shadowbringers was?
Happens every time. Happened with Shadowbringers, happened with Endwalker.
I agree and disagree.
And it's not just that, yeah.
There is a lot more mechanics in the newer dungeons that you don't normally get in the older content. The dungeons in the Expert Roulette are more mechanical heavy than your standard dungeon. You can't just mind numb it. You have to put some thought into it, especially the later, as I said, the expert dungeons. Some of the leveling dungeons, they're kind of a little bit challenging in places, but I wouldn't say that there's a difficulty spike. But once you've beaten the MSQ and you jump into, there is definitely a difficulty spike from 99 to 100. And gear won't really change a lot of that. Especially a certain dungeon. I'm trying not to spoil it because Chris hasn't got there yet. So
I'm gonna add a layer onto that, which is it's difficult because I think the people running mid eye level at the start, every time people either forget about, or there's a lot of people who this is kind of their first on patch expansion lately, I've noticed, and so they don't know that this happens every time. But then on top of that, you have but the actual mechanics for the dungeons, I think the base floor for a lot of them are getting harder over time because they know they can do that because, hey, if you're at Dawntrail, you've gone through a whole bunch of other stuff. But then on top of that, what happens is that as the stats go up, it's not just, I can take an extra hit. It's I can take an extra hit and I can deal more damage, and so the fights are going down quicker. So a boss that used to take 5 minutes and you'd have to do the whole dance for 5 minutes is now a 2-minute fight in a dungeon. And so that happens and stacks up. And so like the difficulty is this weird compounding thing of it's not just are the mechanics harder or are my stats higher. They actually have a corollary relationship to each other. I do think the one thing I said, and I think I saw someone say that I want to say, is they're fun. I think the mechanics across Dawntrail I think are awesome and a lot of fun. And I think the EX1 to me is a really good litmus test because the EX1 for each expansion is always the easiest, but it's also kind of telling of certain like design choreography and thought. And I'll just say that EX1 for Dawntrail is excellent. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I have finally beaten it myself, and I haven't done EX2 yet, I haven't stepped in, but EX1 was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And the raid tier is a lot more fun. I can tell you now, this raid tier is probably one of the most fun raid tiers in a while. It's not, I wouldn't say it's difficult in places, but it's more fun. It's more of a fun challenge than any difficulty. But as people don't seem to understand, like, they seem to add new mechanics in raids, and then after a few raid series, then those mechanics then get filtered down to extremes, and then those raid mechanics then get filtered down to dungeons. So there's a huge chance that a lot of what you're having struggle with has been a thing in the past, in either like a Criterion dungeon, extreme, or a raid, or anything like that, or even an alliance raid. So if you're just doing dungeons, of course, it's going to be completely new to you. And some of the stuff that is completely new is modified versions. Like, they're not exactly the same, but the basis of this, like, people still call them Shiva circles, and they're not Shiva circles. There's nothing to do with Shiva circles nowadays.
The gap is also really big. Like, the gap between tier 1 of an expansion for a raid and the previous tier is the longest gap. And so for anybody that doesn't choose to make raiding in other MMOs or parsing or anything in this, it is very possible that it's been a long time since they've Final Fantasy 14 raided, like, at all. Even for people that are doing normals and nothing else, like, it's been a very, very long time. And the final EX of an expansion, you're in parties with people that are wildly overgeared. So it's just been a very long time since you've been in a party where gear is just at this point of relevance.
One could actually say that the raids aren't hard enough this tier, because the world first race only took 9 hours.
But this happens every... Okay, so here's the thing, too. This happens every time, too. I'm sorry, I just... Like, the 1 through 4 is always much easier. And a lot of people, unless there's a specific pain point, like maybe P3, everyone clears it too fast and it feels like it's going a little too quickly. And then
there's a difference between 28 to 30 hours, which is kind of the average, and 9.
But that's not what they should be balancing around. Like, I'm sorry, but the clear rate for Savage and clear speed for people doing world first is, to me, should be irrelevant to what they're balancing for. What they should be balancing for,
I don't think they should balance it, but I feel like they should pay at least a little bit of it. Like, it shouldn't be the main focus.
They can do
that
with
ultimates. Pay some attention.
As someone who's Savage rated with midcore, hardcore, and like a lot of different levels of people, the problem is every time they make it the 30-hour version, it's fine for people who are at the highest echelon and maybe hardcore, but midcore really suffers. And so it's not that I'm saying don't give any consideration, but yeah.
You got to remember that this raid tier has to last people 6 months.
Yeah, but it's going to last a lot of people 6 months. It's just not going to last the people 6 months who are at the highest echelon of gameplay. And I think the solution to that is to create something like more ultimates rather than raising the level of difficulty across Savage. Savage should be not easy, not hyper approachable, but it should be more approachable like it is now than it was in Endwalker. Because I'll tell you, so many people I know who were in the mid-core or even high mid-core bounced the frick off of Pandemonium. At various
Pandemonium got
points.
stupid at places.
Yeah. That's where that vehemency comes from. You're right that they shouldn't ignore them.
I'm not saying that. By the way, I'm not saying that they should base the raid on it, but they should at least look at it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it should be the focus because
Totally.
as someone who's a mid-core raider who's going to probably take like 5 months to clear it myself, like I understand that like that it's not the big group, but like yeah.
It's a very different conversation to me around saying what M12's difficulty is going to be very different than M4's. Because I think one of the problems with Pandemoniums too is that not only were there like multiple pain point fights, I don't feel like the progression from 1 to 12 was very even. Like P8 is much harder than some people find P8 way harder than P12. But by the same thing, I think one solution that this is an easy to say solution, but maybe it's just get more ultimates, because then people at the highest echelon and because the thing is, an ultimate can basically be as hard as they want it to make, because even if people are bitching about it's supposed to be the hey, here's the ultimate challenge. But yeah, I am sympathetic to people who want to have something to do for Savage rating for 6 months, like you say, but also even if you make it 30 hours, that doesn't really change. Finishing in 10 hours versus 30 hours doesn't change the 6 month wait particularly.
No, it doesn't.
By
the way, Ray talked about the Alliance raid dying. I'm not going to name the dungeon, but I still remember when expansion came out, so of course it was still people learning, but I still remember the 97 dungeon. We nearly ran out of time because the healer couldn't work out how to do knockback mechanics, so they kept falling off the side every time. They either fell off the side or they got killed by standing in the AoE. We nearly ran out. I think we had like 5 minutes before we were going to be kicked out of the dungeon because the healer was struggling with knockback, and I'm like, I was picked a monster at a time. I'm like, I wish I wasn't picked a monster. So I could
The other thing that's interesting about the Alliance raids and copied factory and near ones in particular is I played them a lot pre stat squish, and I can tell you for a fact that post stat squish the near raids started going a lot slower. So I also wonder what numerics may have affected that post or during Endwalker as well, because some of the Shadowbringers content is never quite. It's weird. You'll see like Shadowbringers content takes slightly longer than some other content, and I'm not sure why all that happened. Trying to trend that some of my friends have noticed, people ignoring just not doing mechanics. Yeah, interesting.
One of the things that I think has been hard is like, especially when you get into Alliance raids specifically, is what is the incentive to do better? If I show up and I just go AFK or I eat a sandwich in looking for raid in WoW, I get loot at the end, or the group fails and I don't get loot, but I didn't put any effort in. And if I put effort in, I get loot at the end or I don't get loot. It's about the same case. So why would I not just eat the sandwich beyond just personal accountability? And so you do start to kind of wonder if there would be a way of kind of better measuring effort.
By the way, you say that. By the way, you say that. I actually had. By the way, you say that. I actually had that as an experience recently, right? I actually felt bad for the guy. He said, "Oh, I've just finished cooking. I have this sandwich next to me. I'm just going to eat this sandwich while we do this raid." And then 2 minutes later, they all kicked him out of the Alliance. And I'm like, really? It's an Alliance raid. I don't care if he's going to take 10 seconds to eat food.
I see, but then don't sign up for an Alliance raid. Go eat your food, then go sign up for an Alliance raid.
He's a DPS. He could have signed up ages ago for all we know.
See, but what we're talking about right here, I think, is exactly what the disconnect is, right? Because I think you're fine with that, but like for me, I'm very frustrated because I want to finish the Alliance raid quickly. If you're learning, that's one thing, but if you're choosing not to engage, you are inhibiting me being able to go do something else by just willfully not playing. So I understand that, who cares? But you know,
for me, if he said like he's eating a 3-course meal, then yeah, fine, I understand. But something that he can like pick up, put down, and continue playing, and then pick up, put down, and continue playing. I have no.
Well, if
no
he's
qualms with him.
playing, that's one thing,
Yeah, he
right?
he was playing a little bit. Like he wasn't top tier, but like he was doing stuff.
Yeah, but then honestly, don't say that you're eating a sandwich because you're going to get people who are going to be frustrated because they've had a lot of AFKers or, you know.
By the way, people were actually running Aguilera to min max as well, weren't they? Because it was the fastest way to. I haven't done it myself because I just want to play the jobs properly, but it's the fastest way to get from 90 to 100 is to spam Aguilera.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that was
That's really because usually you don't get a lot of XP from the zero dungeon from any zero zero.
So is that why is that?
I don't know exactly, but supposedly from what I've heard, it's one of the fastest ways. At least I could, if chat wants to confirm it.
Weird.
That's weird. I know that I've just been doing fates while waiting for stuff and get crazy amounts of XP from that. I think I think the problem you run into with metrics is you so easily are going to tilt into something like what is effort, right? Other than something like a parsing, right? Like how do you even tell someone?
I don't know. It feels like one of the handful of times that maybe AI could help us, that it could better tell if somebody is just doing their best.
See, but that's going to feel bad if it's wrong, right? And then it's going to feel like there's no real accountability. Whereas if Chili's situation with the sandwich,
then maybe the reward goes down. If the reason they're doing they're AFKing Algaia is that they want the 6 million experience for doing nothing, you can AFK it. You're going to get 500,000. You're going to get 500,000 experience. And see how many of these people are, well, I'm not going to just AFK it for 500,000. Great. Then don't.
And also people AFK frontlines as well, don't they? Still,
they do.
Like
no. So here's the. I don't know if it's different on other servers. On Crystal, if you do that, you get kicked. Like
PvP roulette for the day, AFKing one time a day is like wildly rewarded.
Yeah,
Your first roulette of the day
doesn't
ridiculous
really
amounts.
kick.
Yeah,
and you do not have to do much. Literally, just run towards the largest group of people and push a single ability. And it's
I'm not saying that you're standing still at the entrance doing nothing. Like I just mean
they'll kick that. But like if you just mount up and put auto run towards the big group of people, oh no, I got there and I died.
But the thing is you are rewarded for wins in Frontlines. You are given more rewards if you win. You are given progress. I'm not saying it works. And my point is just they are rewarding you for a win. They are rewarding you for if you get a win, you get achievement points towards mounts. If you get more points along your crystal thing. Like there's multiple ways in which they're rewarding you. For that. I think part of the problem with Frontlines is because it's so big and chaotic that most people don't feel like trying actually does make a difference, so why bother trying? Because
I can't actually skew whether it wins or doesn't win on my own. I played the best game of my life, I lost, I sat still, when we won. It feels arbitrary.
Here's a cheat code. Play Scholar in Frontlines and you will absolutely be able to do something.
Don't know, as healer, I feel like I can go white mage, and I think my best heals is 2.5 million now. It's like I feel like I'm doing something because I'm just spamming heals.
I play Scholar, and I'm usually top 5 to top, at least top 10, but usually top 5, if not number 1 or 2 for deep damage in Frontlines, because you can just do ridiculous.
I'm not damage. I just spam heals.
Healing is incidental for Scholar for me. But no, like I think I think the difficulty question around Dawntrail is interesting because it's the first time we're getting a lot of people who came in during like the late Shadowbringers and Walker stuff where they're having their opinion on a lot of this. I think something Yoshi P said, this was probably like 2-3 years ago now, but I think he was talking about the advanced jobs like Sage and Reaper at the time, but is that because the game is kind of like iterative but also like additive, the idea is that Dawntrail can be just harder because you're going in. The assumption at 100 is that you've played through a Realm Reborn, Heaven's Word and stuff, learned all these things. That's why they don't feel the need to explain a tank buster in Dawntrail like it's explained in Mogomog, right? To a new player. But also to Chili, one of the things you said, a really good example of a mechanics coming back down is there is a savage mechanic in P10S where the tanks get yeeted. Basically, they get thrown, and you have to try and align yourself to hit a place correctly. That is now in M1 normal. Basically, I mean, it's not identical, but it's the same idea of like placing yourself and being thrown. There's like sorry, go ahead.
As I said, like The mechanics aren't exactly one-to-one from previous raids, but they will use the idea and concept and twist it. And so that if you know the previous idea, you'll have a rough idea what you got to do with the new mechanic. It won't be exact, but you'll have the idea. It's not blind, should we say?
Yeah, and
it's not your first time.
Once you do Savage stuff in any tier and then start looking for it, you can see it as it all trickles down. Oh, there was a good example. There's a whole bunch of Golbez stuff that like has now ended up in places, and I'm forgetting what the examples are, but yeah.
Well, look at the fire and ice mechanics where you can't move. We got fire where you got to move, and ice where fire where you can't move, and ice where you got to move. I did it backwards, but
I really liked the personal accountability of fire and ice in places like Delibram, where like only you could see what you need to be doing. I can't help you.
One of the new dungeons has right? Has the Ozma mechanic where you can't move.
I really liked that.
One of Dawntrail, I think what so far, obviously there's a lot of room to go for content, but so far one of the things I think Dawntrail has done better than Endwalker is that it has emphasized not on taking away personal responsibility, but allowing for more room for one person fucking up is not an immediate cascade moment. And so there's still a lot of personal responsibility, but there's also a lot more what I'd call medium mechanics. Like EX1 in Dawntrail, really, there are no particularly hard mechanics. Like there's no like mechanic that is like the hard mechanic. It's kind of just a medium level, medium difficulty, just coming. But also, another interesting that's happened is for all the tanks, right? And I think this is true for Feint, but I don't play DPS much. But Reprisal is now 15 seconds, right? It went from 10 to 15. And what that's allowed as an incidentary effect is that they can plan for attacks to... they're incentivized to plan for attacks to be farther spread, because then a proper use of a feint or a reprisal at that near the tail end of right before something's being used and catching two things is rewarded. Whereas old reprisal and feint meant that in order for anything like that to be intended design, the abilities and mechanics had to come right back to back. So just that extra 5 seconds has given the designers more leeway to be able to make there be a little bit more breathing room between mechanics, even if it's just a literal second. Which has been having interesting impacts across the board. So there have been a lot of like minor changes that may not feel that different, but from a designing standpoint, has I feel like actually given them a lot more tools to work with.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where they go from here. World First Race, obviously.
By the way, I'm still frustrated that I didn't get to do that. Next time.
Sorry, bud.
It happens.
But yeah, I think, is there anything else on this topic? You guys want to do some 20 questions?
Before we get onto that, I do want to say I can't remember who I read this on Twitter from, so I can't give you credit. So I don't know if it was you, but I did like the idea that someone joked about the fact that in the reason why stuff is a little bit more difficult with Dawntrail is the fact that technically we beat Heidelin in Endwalker, so now we don't have the buff from her anymore. So technically we've nerfed ourselves.
Blessing of Light.
Yeah, we don't have the Blessing of Light anymore, so technically we're nerfed. So things should be harder.
Actually, that's an interesting lore question. Have we actually been... Okay, that completely different discussion. But I'm going to write that down. Let's go...
Yeah. Because now we have the Blessing of Azen, but is that the same as the Blessing of Light?
Oh, is it changed when you, like, go in? No, because it would be the Echo.
Yeah.
Wait, that's lore stuff. That's all its own.
Well, yeah, that's its own stuff. But like, I like that tweet that someone made. I can't remember who did it, but like, I found that funny.
It's an interesting idea. I would say Dawntrail is for as maybe a button on the thing. Dawntrail, I think, it will be hard to fully evaluate until we're into the later patches when we can go back and do earlier stuff and steal out feels. But I think overall it's absolutely trending in a good direction, and that's probably the most important thing to me, rather than it's like the ultimate best. It's just like, I like these and the mechanical complexity and what's being added better. There's also more chaos moments, and what that is like Barbaricia's whirlwinds, where she's just firing out whirlwinds, that kind of mechanics. There's a lot more of those in Dawntrail, and I love just like, oh god, there's no proper way to do this, just adapt and move. Love that stuff.
Cool. All right. Dawntrail's not too hard. That was the summary of the day. Dawntrail's too hard. and it's a hard time to have. It is a hard time to have a job in the gaming space. I think that was the summary of the day.
Turns out life is harder than Dawntrail.
Life is harder than Dawntrail. All right. Well, on that note, 20 questions.
Let's do it. We got this, Chili. We're what, 2 for 2, 3 for 3? We've been doing good.
I thought we lost the last one.
I haven't lost one, so I know I'm a.
We lost the last one that I
right?
did.
I think that was Chili. That was you and Brian, I think, because Brian said he lost the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you guys with Road Rash
Please don't be-
64.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, I
it.
wasn't there for that one.
You think you would have gotten it?
No problem. Well, I mean, I don't know that game, so like I wouldn't have been able to use that as a like.
Yeah, I did.
I
didn't know there was.
I
really
just
sequels.
assume everybody else has had all of the same life experiences, plus or minus, that I have.
Yeah.
Like that's
How
a
do you
completely
feel about
reasonable way
Midcore?
to tread through life.
I'm in England, Chris. I'm in England, and I'm the exact clone of you. Had every experience that you've had in Texas.
9 billion gamers out there across history.
Yeehaw.
They've all had exactly the same experience I have. It's so great. All right, first question.
Thank God we're a single mind.
Did the
do you wanna
game
go
come
first?
out after the year 2000?
After 2000, yes.
Okay.
I like how you write them down because now you
Write
can
them
work.
down.
Last time
I've been
you
losing
didn't
count
work out.
lately. I have proven that counting to 20 is not necessarily the best of my skill
That's
sets.
why I've been writing them down so that way I could tell you when people. Because
Dude, the CD
as I said last time, I wanted to be honest. So that lost us a couple of questions. So
It did.
The CD cartridge doesn't work as much because, well, I guess there's still like
Nah.
all sorts of things like the Nintendo cartridges and stuff. So it's still worth asking if it's a CD based game. Also, wait, can I get a clarification? If a game is digital download only, that means that if I asked if it was on CD, you would say no, correct?
Right. If something was never released in any physical form, and you ask if it's released in that physical
Is that a
form, the answer
question?
would be no.
Uh-huh. Okay.
that question.
Well, that was a clarification point. So now my question
Okay.
is,
Just
my-
for
not my
future
question.
reference, just
Yeah.
establishing the rule.
My
was it
question,
a-
right?
oh yeah, go
My-
ahead, Julie. Go. Yeah.
Did it come out before 2010?
Did it come out before 2010? No.
Okay.
So we're looking at a more modern game. So between 2010 and 2024.
Well, then honestly, the CD game might be a good one because if it's a Nintendo game, it would have to be one of the best micro SD cartridges. So that kind of also includes that. Okay, was it on CD? Like, was it a CD?
Well, was it on a disc-based
Yes,
game?
that was a disc-based game.
It is possible to get on a disc.
Okay, so there's at least a version of it.
Because if you say CD, you could trick us by saying that no, it's on Blu-ray.
Yeah. I want to say Chris wouldn't do that, but Chris would absolutely do that.
Because it could be it could be DVD. Because those were the
Yeah.
360. So
Yep. Okay. Do we want to start breaking it down by companies that would have made it or published it?
You sure? But do it by region.
Yeah. Well,
Probably.
first I'm thinking, when did Wii U become defunct? Just because I'm trying to think.
2017.
Okay. So that it technically could be a Wii U game, but I'm trying. I don't. God, this is the problem. Is like earlier, like the current days is like anyone could have made anything, and it's a freaking nightmare storm of everything. Was it published or created by Sony? Was it published or developed by Sony or one of their subsidiaries?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I would rather do a blanket statement than that. Was a Western game?
No.
Not West. Okay. So that takes out.
That
Well, the problem is that there's still things like, okay, what happens if you have, well, it never came out, but like Scalebound, right? So wait, can I get
I don't think
clarification?
it'll count.
When I say when you
that
say
one.
not Western, do you mean not Western developed or just like or style?
It was not made in the West.
It was not.
It was not
yeah,
made in the
made
West.
here. It was
Okay.
made.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess worth maybe trying to check if it's a Nintendo game then.
Yeah, I think there's Eastern games made in the West as a
Yeah.
stylistic choice.
Yeah. Good. Ghost of Tsushima, as an example.
Yeah.
Although you could argue that style, but not mechanically, because mechanically it's more in line with something like a sucker, with like a Spider-Man or whatever. Okay.
So that means it's probably a Japanese-based title.
Yeah. Well, let's take out the big dogs to begin with, because if we do a Nintendo question, it then brings it down to only the smaller people. Because we already did Sony and stuff, so it's not like a Yakuza or whatever. Okay. Was it published or? or
that's Sega.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, do we want to?
Yakuza's Sega.
Yeah, but it was published by Sony, wasn't it?
No.
It was just released on. Oh, I should. Okay, No,
Yakuza games were developed and published by Sega.
Okay.
Well, developed by Ryu Ga Gotoku Studio, and then published by Sega, or Deep Silver, depending on the title.
Yep. You're totally right. Well, honestly, do we want to ask a Sega question?
Sure.
Was it published or developed by Sega?
No.
Okay. I'll eat chili. I mean,
we might as well bring the big one as well. Was it published or made by Nintendo?
No.
Yeah. Okay, that helps. Okay, so who are major I so badly want to ask if it's a FromSoft game, but that's such like a limited number of games. But like,
Not really, right?
well, no, because Bloodborne was published by Sony, so that it couldn't be a FromSoft game. But it couldn't be Bloodborne. That doesn't mean it couldn't be, any of the other FromSoft games like, Elden Ring.
I mean, that leaves Dark Souls, Armored Core, Steel Battalion, Armored Core, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 2 again.
I think it only takes.
Well, and Elden. No, because that's Bandai.
Yeah, Bandai.
Yeah, the only one it takes is
Deracine,
Bloodborne and Demon Souls.
And Demon Souls, the original, yeah.
But that's 2009, so.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't counting it.
Well, I guess the remaster is a thing.
What's a game Chris would have played made by Eastern? Nier was. No, because Nier was fucking Platinum, but it was published by Sony. They literally have the president of Sony.
That's true.
Or no, it was published by
PC
Square
game.
Enix. Technically, it was published by Square Enix. Right? I guess we could ask if it's a Square Enix game, because that might actually help.
I mean, it's your choice.
Okay. Was it developed or published by Square Enix?
Yes.
Hey! Now we're getting somewhere.
Hey.
Okay, so it was on CD. Oh man, now there's a freaking God. There's such a because they have Final Fantasy.
You're like
Dragon Quest. We got Final Fantasy, Dragon. So like, what are the mainline series that would make sense within the 2010s? You've got obviously
easy
Final
way.
Fantasy. Yeah, go ahead.
Was it between 2015 and 2020?
No.
Oh, that's actually but now we don't know if it was between 2010 and 2015 or 2020 and 2004 or 2024.
Yeah, but we've still got that still cut down from 14 years down to 9.
Not between 20. Okay, so it's between Okay. What are the
2010
games?
and 2015 and 2020 and 2024. Well,
Yeah.
when I say 2020, is that the cutoff point and the game can be in 2020 or would it have to be 2021?
When we say a year, we mean between midnight January 1 to 11:59 December.
Okay, so
As it should
it
be.
would have to be.
Or it has to be before January 1st is officially here. If you have to say
Yeah.
after, it has to be after December 31st is officially over.
Okay, so that would mean it's 2011 to 2014 and 2021 to now.
Right. So this would be
So-
after technically.
So there you go. So it's even less. It's even less years. It's only 8 years versus 14.
Okay, can I ask a question that's going to be okay? As considered by the Square Enix development team business structure, is it one of their primary 3 games, which as of currently is Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, and Dragon Quest?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we could just waste some questions. Probably we've got so many.
Yeah. Do we want to just burn that down to see which one of those 3
yeah.
it is?
Yeah. You know what? Because we're a Final Fantasy, we discussed Final Fantasy 14.
Let's do it.
Let's just say, is it Final Fantasy?
Yes.
Base.
Okay. Okay.
I know what game it won't be because you said Square Enix, and I wish it was. In my opinion, one of the greatest Final Fantasy games that have been released in years, and I don't care. I will fight anyone. Strangers of Paradise is one of the greatest Final Fantasy titles of all time.
It's fun.
It's one of the greatest Final Fantasy titles of all time.
I'm glad you like it. Okay, let's.
You
think.
tell me a Final Fantasy game with a better job system other than 10-2.
I don't know. See, mechanically, I'm not. I definitely won't argue with you. I definitely think it's a bunch.
The
of
story
fun.
wise, I'm not going to say it's the best. But
Okay, cool. Then I can follow you.
gameplay-wise,
I can follow you. Mechanically, I'm totally
the
with you. It's phenomenal, but
Also,
the
I've lost
story takes so many points off for me. Okay. What I'm trying to think about. Is it a mainline Final Fantasy? And I don't necessarily just mean like a number. What I just mean like is it one of the numbered specifically?
It is numbered.
It is numbered.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, you're here. Okay, well, if it's numbered, then it's got to be 15 or 16.
I mean, no, right? No, because it could. Is it a remaster?
No.
Is it Final Fantasy 16?
It is Final Fantasy 16.
Yay!
Yay!
I will say, the job system is definitely better in Stranger of Paradise. I really love the flow of 16.
14 questions. Good for you guys.
Yeah,
Yay.
undefeated. At least me and Chili as a duo is undefeated so far.
Yeah.
Well, what are you working on this week, Ellie?
Get back and forth.
I'm sorry. I am currently working on. I'm going to do a panel for AetherCon, or at least I have to submit it yet. So I've been working on that, talking about reflections and explaining all the metaphysics and everything involved with them. For so hoping to do that. And then beyond that, I'm slowly preparing videos in the background to start actually putting out videos again sometime in late August after I've moved. And also then I'll be whenever I start doing that, I'll also be doing the MSQ replay over on Ares and Archives, our YouTube channel.
Chili, what about you?
Well, you can find me over Moogle Run Radio, where I do a stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We talk about Final Fantasy 14. I'm going to think about playing a new game because although I love Dawntrail, we've been playing it a lot. So I'm trying to look into something else to play on stream. But apart from that, yes, you can catch me playing Final Fantasy 14. You can catch my co-host, who also plays on the channel Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So yeah, we just hit 1.2K a while back. And so yeah, thank you again for all the support. And thank you for having me on, Chris. It's always nice chatting with you. And it's always good to chat with you, Ellie.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Cool.
Love talking to you.
Well, I'm off to play some games.
Sounds good.
So thank you guys for joining me on a Friday. And we will see you next week.
Sounds like a plan.
With hopefully more drama, this time with ideally better news. This week was a lot of job layoffs. So hopefully everybody lands on their feet. It's nothing but good news next week. It'd be great to be excited about something. So if one of the big studios could announce something awesome, that'd be cool. Let's do that.
Yep.
Where do I? It's the outro,
What does
right?
the button do?
How do I do that?
How do I shot web?
I don't know. I don't know where the outro is. I think you just run this again and just end it.